Have you been told that if you leave the house, you can't take anything with you? Or you're not allowed to take anything, it all stays with the house until the divorce? Or maybe I've paid for it during the marriage with my money, so it's all mine. Or perhaps your ex simply has taken everything and refuses to give any of it back to you. If you've answered yes to any of these things today, this episode will be perfect for you. Because we're going to be talking about how furniture and household items actually get divided during divorce and what the law says about it. And we're going to give you 4 practical ways based on your divorce personality type to sort it out without burning thousands of dollars in legal fees arguing over a couch. We're also going to talk about the common mistakes people make when dealing with household goods and how to keep these arguments from derailing your entire property settlement agreement. Because the reality is, while furniture feels important in the moment, the way you handle these arguments can have a much bigger impact on your future than just who gets the couch. Welcome, Mum.
Hello, Laura. Hello, everyone. The couch, eh?
So when people separate, Mum, they focus on the big things, the house, the car, the bank accounts, more importantly, who gets the kids. But something people don't talk about enough really is what actually happens to all the stuff inside the house. The furniture, the couch, the bed, the toilet brush, pretty much everything, the washing machine, you name it.
Yep. So we very rarely hear people worry about toilet brushes and hose fittings and things because people think that's easy and cheap. But by golly, when you start adding one of those to every shopping trip, it gets expensive.
Before we get started, if there's intimidation or family violence, safety, of course, comes first. Do not retrieve any belongings alone if it's unsafe. Call 1-800-RESPECT or 13 11 14 Lifeline if you feel triggered by any discussion today about family violence. And remember, this is just general education. Mum is not your lawyer. I am not a lawyer. We're just talking about what usually happens and how you can maybe negotiate for furniture and things in your case. All right, so let's get to the jingle and let's get started. Hello, I'm Laura, divorced mother of 3, and I'm here with my mother, Lynette Galvin, with 35 years' experience in family law. You're listening to the Divorce Course podcast. Through our candid discussions, we hope to help you through your divorce or de facto separation. We will be answering the most commonly asked questions and covering the stages and steps that you will face on your way to freedom. When couples separate, what does the law actually say about furniture and contents of the house? Oh, absolutely nothing.
No, there's a specific part of the legislation that talks about companion animals, dogs and cats and things, but there's nothing about pianos, couches, microwaves, whatever. So it's just lumped in with property. Okay, that's what the legislation says.
So who legally owns the furniture in a marriage or de facto relationship?
It can be divided between the parties, right? It's just part of the overall property pool.
Who legally owns it?
Well, both of you if you bought it together.
So it's who legally owns it when you're married and together?
No one asks that question when they're married and together, but you both own it. Like it's part of your general business enterprise of the marriage, right? You buy a house, you save up, maybe you get chattels in the house, you get furniture, TV and all of that. So it's really belongs to both of you, but sometimes someone will come out waving a receipt and go, I bought that big television and I want it. And the other person goes, well, fair enough, I don't like it, but you're going to have to pay me for half of it or something.
And let's just, so just to establish that first thing, that everything that everybody owns is in the marriage belongs to both people. And in a de facto relationship, it belongs to both people, regardless of who bought it at the time.
No, I don't think you can say that. I think things that you bought together belong to both of you. Things that you bought for yourself on your own, like credit card or whatever, during a relationship, arguably belongs to you because you'll have a receipt and evidence of payment. But as far as separation is concerned, you don't get to take that with you just because you bought it. It's so hard, Laura. It's so hard to talk about it. But the longer the marriage, the more likely it is that it belongs together. Sometimes there's a piece of furniture from great-grandma or something that's extra special or someone's piano, and that might get special recognition. But most of it just gets sort of lost in the wash.
So can I ask then, so if someone said, I bought that couch during the marriage, with my money, so it's mine.
Yes.
Is that how it actually works in family law?
Sometimes, but it doesn't have to. But the court will not make an order about that couch unless it's an amazing couch that Henry VIII once slept on or something.
So when is the sometimes that they can keep it because it's theirs?
It depends. It depends who ends up with it in the early stages and if the other person's got an appetite to fight over those things. So, sorry, I've got a smudge on my glasses. Yes, so the court doesn't do furniture fights. They expect you to work it out amongst yourselves. Like if the police turned up over an argument over, I don't know, that couch, and you've got the receipts, to the police, that means you own it, right?
Right.
That might be helpful, okay? And it might be that you're so in love with that couch that you take it with you and you've got your receipt. Chances are it will end up in your possession. Often furniture ends up in the ultimate possession of the person who's got them at the time that the orders are sorted.
Yeah, I get that. But realistically, isn't it just everything is a part of the property pool?
It is. It is.
So then doesn't legally everybody own it?
See what you're thinking. Yeah, everybody owns it at any point. Yeah.
So anything in the marriage, any furniture, anything bought should be considered part of the marriage property pool or de facto property
That's right. That's different to say both of you own it. Everything in the property, everything that you own, either of you own or both of you own, is part of the property pool, goes into the balance sheet for division between you both. Yeah.
Okay. Can the court technically decide who gets which item of furniture if you can't agree?
Technically, they can. Just like they can divide up bank accounts and percentages, they can change the ownership of various things. But, like I said, unless it's really, really special, it's just too hard. It ties the court up. What people can do it and should separate their property and it suits themselves. What the court will order often is a mechanism by which they can solve their property dispute rather than going through list by list, item by item on a list.
What about this myth? What about leaving the house? So we hear this myth all the time. If you leave the house, you lose your rights to everything, including everything in the house.
Yep.
Is that true?
That's not true at all. Not true at all. That's not a factor when the court's working out property pool and who gets what in the property pool. They don't say, oh, well, they left, they don't get the share of the house or they don't get some of the furniture. They don't. No, it doesn't matter. I hate to think, Laura, of the number of people I've talked to who are staying in the house because some lawyers told them to stay in the house or they'll lose their rights. And it's really, I can't think of an occasion where that would be true, you know.
Mum, you just said a minute ago, sometimes it just matters, it just ends up whoever the furniture ends up with.
I was talking about the house and leaving the house. You don't lose your right. I said often it ends up in the hands of the person who's got it. So you come to your final day or your mediation or whatever, and unless there's something really in particular that you want from the other house, generally you divide, like you said, the house, the car, the furniture, house, the car, the bank accounts, and the caravan and whatever. The furniture, usually it just goes something like that each party otherwise retain the assets in their possession, right?
But you can sit in mediation and say, hey, I really want the couch and the TV.
Yes.
So you can ask for it.
In mediation, you can do what you like. And if you made an order about who got what furniture, the court will accept that and make an order. If you send up a consent order that says that the one person's going to retain all of the things in list A attached to these orders, and the other person's going to have all of the things in list B attached to these orders, then the court will make those orders no problem. What they don't do is have a judge go, all right, well, you have that couch and she can have the couch downstairs and, you know, you have that microwave and you have the kettle. It's just not cost effective.
Well, that gets to my next question, the cost versus the value. What usually costs more? Is it the furniture itself or the legal fees to argue
The legal fees. 100 times it's usually the legal fees. I mean, first of all, remember this. No matter what you've got the property insured for, like your stuff, contents insured for, they're secondhand. They're already secondhand. So you don't have to go through and say, oh, I'm going to have to replace these. and it's going to cost this much to replace all of the furniture.
Okay. All right. So for fairness, then, if one person ends up with keeping most of the household stuff, the other person just loses out, or can that value be accounted for in the property settlement?
That's what happens a lot. If one person's got, say, the entire contents of the marital home, except for the stuff that another person's taken to live in another place, you might find that one person has $1,000 worth of secondhand furniture, and the person who stayed in the house might have $3,000 worth of secondhand furniture. And that gets put in the table and worked out as part of your percentage.
When have you seen that in practice? And what do you usually tell your clients if they start arguing about furniture?
Yes. Again, I say this isn't a conversation that it's worth having with me, and it isn't one that's worth going to the court for. And so I give them some examples of how the court has dealt with property, like things in the past. But look, just a quick thing, the person with whom the children are living most of the time should have their bed, the children's stuff in their house, most of it, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We're going to get into the points in a minute about what you can do. But furniture can sometimes be really emotional for you. You know, you've got memories of your kids, I don't know, measuring their height on the bookshelf or the bookcase, or it could absolutely make you feel sick just looking at it. But then there's also that feeling if you're going through family violence or coercive control and they take everything, you feel like that they're controlling you still and it's not fair. And so how often do you see these kind of furniture fights derailing cases completely?
They can really derail the cases, not because of the values. It's usually because there's one particular thing or two particular things. One person will ask for them just to cheese the other person off and like you say, derail the whole mediation. I see it a lot.
So just summarising from the questions I've asked you, household goods are part of the property pool.
Yes.
It doesn't matter who purchased them
Nope.
in the divorce. Furniture, appliance, artwork, electronics, they all are part of the assets.
Yep.
And courts technically can decide who gets it, but you've got to weigh up whether you want to spend more money in court with a lawyer than it probably costs to replace it.
I think there should be one more point in there, Laura, and that is when you are in court or if you're heading to court, the furniture kind of has settled down into either one person's possession or the other person's possession. And a lot of times a valuer will be sent in to value the furniture in one place and the jewellery and, the electronics maybe, and the furniture, electronics, jewellery, whatever, in the other person's possession. And sometimes the court, like if one person's got, like I said, $1,000 worth and the other person's got $3,000 worth, they might give the person with the less furniture extra money, an extra bit of money to make it, like if it was going to be 50-50, for instance, give the $3,000 person gives $1,000 over and you've both got $2,000 worth of furniture. So they do that. Yeah.
Okay.
Compensate
so
with
really
money.
The key takeaway is, before we give you some strategies, even if one person keeps everything, the value can still be accounted for in your property pool, in your property settlement.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So let's look at these practical ways to divide your furniture. And we've obviously, if you haven't listened to us before, we've got 4 divorce personality types that we try and talk around, and that is amicable, avoidant, high conflict, and manipulative and controlling. Now, Mum, this strategy for amicable, if you and your ex can organise some stuff and not need intermediaries for this is a really good way to do it without lawyers, without wasting money. And that's the 2-list method. So can you take us through how someone listening today who's got an amicable person could do this method?
Okay. So what you do, you get one of you will make 2 lists of roughly equal value. So you've got your famous couch on one side. You might trade that off against a TV on the other side, and they're roughly equal. The kettle, the microwave, I've seen people go into this much detail. The bed in the main room, the bed in the spare room, and so they kind of make 2 equal lists as far as they're concerned. Don't put numbers on it, guys. Don't put values, because that invites dispute about, it's not worth $25. So just do it as best you can. And those 2 lists, then give it to the other person. and the other person who didn't make the list can choose one of the lists to keep. And it's really quite good because the person who makes the two lists had better be careful that they make them fair. Otherwise, they might end up with the dud list.
That's what you used to do to us when we used to dish up the ice cream. If you were dishing up the ice cream, you didn't get to choose which bowl you got. So, because we tended to just dish ourselves a lot and everybody else a little bit. So you're like, okay, so you dish it up and then you get to choose.
There
so
you
it's
go,
the same
parenting
kind of
tricks.
thing. Yes, so it's encouraging fairness. It's simple, it's fast.
Yes.
And if you're amicable, it is the easiest way to not cost yourself a lot of money in your property settlement.
And you can ask the other person to do the two lists, and you can choose one. The only time I've seen that fail, Laura, sorry to cut across you, but the only way I've seen that fail is if someone is nasty and puts things they absolutely know the other person wants on one list with hardly anything else. And then, that can fall apart.
So that's
amicable.
why we're saying amicable, amicable.
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go on to avoidant. This is a strategy that we've seen used a few times and it seems to work. And that's when your ex refuses to engage. And we do actually have another episode called What About Their Stuff and Their Belongings? Because sometimes the exes, they kind of leave their stuff at your place or they've moved out, but they've left all their stuff there, but they don't want to come and pick it up. And either because they're avoidant or because sometimes they're manipulative control. So when someone refuses to engage and you're just like, I need to get this part sorted, Mum, you've recommended send it to them.
Yes.
And there's a few ways to send it to them. So can you talk us through this strategy?
It's kind of like pack and drop, isn't it? So particularly if there's been coercive control, it really can be disturbing to have their stuff there and have them keep coming back. Okay, so pack up the stuff. Be clear that you've packed up their stuff. Take photos of what you put in or video what you put in, seal it, label the boxes, take a photo of the packed up stuff, send it to your ex and say, I would like this collected in the next 14 days. Otherwise, I'm going to deliver it to your mother's or to your sister's place, or I'm going to put it in a storage unit and send it in your name and you can pay the bill.
Yeah, or I'll pay it for 2 weeks and then after I'm going to close it.
That's right. Yep. I'm moving these out.
So, look, and there may be some people who, like you said, they're avoidant. They don't want to deal with it. So you're creating that urgency for them. And it's removing that whole argument moving forwards. There's a lot of things you need to be thinking about in your de facto separation or divorce and your property settlement stuff. The big stuff, not this little stuff that's just hanging around, the secondhand fridge, the secondhand everything. So if you can get that sorted and get it out, particularly if you just do not want to look at their stuff ever again and you just need mental space, this can be a really good strategy. But like you said, Mum, it's really important that you give them forewarning, you give them an opportunity to get it themselves if it's safe. And if they don't do that, say, I will be packing it up and I will be delivering it to your mum's or I'll be delivering it to yours, or I'll be putting it in a storage shed unit that I'll be paying for a month and then I'm not going to pay anymore. Here's the key.
I think be careful that you've given a reasonable time for them to collect it before you deliver that ultimatum. And there's one category of stuff that I always struggle with and I know clients struggle with, and that's the stuff in the shed. If your ex has a shed full of stuff, you don't know what the heck it is. And of course, it would be the end of the world if you touched it or that's tricky. And some people can't sell the house because of what's in the shed. And so
what do you do then?
You do a kind of version of this I found successful, and that is you write the letter and say, this is the stuff in the shed, maybe video it for your own records. I need to list the house, or we need to list the house for sale. This needs to be gone, and it needs to be gone within the next 21 days. You need to give them a bit of time. Failing which, I'm going to have a truck come in and just clear the whole lot and take it to the dump because we need it gone. You don't want to dump that on their mother's front lawn because it is probably all their just in case stuff, And so I've seen people use the shed and needing to come to the shed and needing to not clearing out the shed as a means of slowing down the whole property settlement thing and as a means of continuing to either be avoidant or to be manipulative, turning up at the wrong time or arguing if they're high conflict. So yes, the shed is a big issue, particularly on a rural block or a 5-acre block.
So please get your independent legal advice, because each situation is different. If there's a business involved, there's other things you need to consider there. But go and see a lawyer, say, hey, I'm going to do this in my situation. Is this a good idea? Just find out, just check. So that can be a good way of just going, well, I've given you a warning. If you don't do it, then I'm sending it off to wherever. At least it's out of your house. Do you only do that if you're selling, or if you just want their stuff out and you're not selling? Need to start doing your disclosure but have no idea where to start? Feeling overwhelmed about mediation coming up? Or just trying to deal with negotiating with a manipulative ex? Then you need to go to thedivorcecourse.com.au to go to the free resources section, where you can get a mediation checklist, a disclosure checklist, a word salad, read a letter like a pro checklist, and also a before you go checklist. Get ahead of the game and be organised and ready, as this handy checklist, along with the accompanying episodes of the podcast, will be perfect for you. All you need to do is go to thedivorcecourse.com.au and go to the free resource section and download the free checklists today. Do you only do that if you're selling, or if you just want their stuff out and you're not selling?
You can do it if property settlement is happening and you want them to take their share of the furniture, or you want their stuff out of the house. You don't really do it in the very early stages, okay?
Yeah.
Because that everyone's reeling from separation. We'll assume they are. And it may be seen to be unreasonable to do it immediately. So, we talk about in the webinars the very short-term things you need to do. That's not a short-term thing you need to do. And it's not even a negotiation medium-term. It's kind of the thing you do when a bit of time's gone past, you've sorted most things out, and then that's the next thing that has to be done.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's the last thing that gets sorted.
And if you are in the early stages, or you're not quite there yet, and you don't want to look at their stuff, you can still pack it up into boxes and move it into one room. If you're living there and they've moved out, you're still quite entitled to do that.
Absolutely.
So let's look at high conflict situations and personalities. So this is the ones that want to fight over everything. Now, be careful, because I have heard people be told, however, this strategy is the only strategy you can use, and that when going through divorce, you must sell everything and then just divide up the cash, and that's not the case. But in this situation, if you can't negotiate, sometimes the easiest option is to say, okay, well, let's just sell everything, all our furniture, all our TVs, everything on Facebook Marketplace or whatever, and then we'll just divide up the cash.
Must have the patience of a saint to do that, and a lot of headroom to do that. I think you can do that, of course, but look at all of the micro negotiations you're having to do. If you can't agree on who gets that TV and who gets that couch, you're going to have to make agreements on, well, how much will we list this for? Who's going to be available when this person doesn't turn up? How much are we going to let it drop for? How long have we got? So I've seen it, but they've got a huge appetite for detail, those people.
Yeah, but it is a solution.
Yep. If
you can just say, well, look, I'll sell it all and we'll just divvy up the profits. If you're okay with that, then I'll do that. But just make sure you've got some sort of agreement that they don't come back later and say you undersold everything, because I can see that being a strategy.
That gets raised all the time. And it might be a practical solution if you've got some wonderful antique or that piano, that may be the best way, but it will devalue it. Facebook Marketplace is not the place to get the highest value for it, but it does get rid of the item. Yes. I'm asking, I think anyone who's really, really stuck about stuff, to do a little bit of soul searching and see if you'd be happy with just a couple of $1,000s adjustment your way for you to go out and buy maybe more modern stuff, or, something that suits your demeanor and your lifestyle, something like that, that doesn't remind you of all of the bad times.
So true. So the last one is manipulative and controlling. And look, that pack it up and send it to them strategies does work sometimes for these people. But the other option is, and you've talked about it at the beginning, the cheaper version of what you said at the beginning, where they get a valuer in, like All Assets Appraisal, who we're not sponsored by or anything, but they go in, they look at both houses, they value everything in both houses, and then that gets put on either side of the ledger.
Yeah.
A manipulative and controlling person might not want to do anything. They might be the ones that dilly-dally and delay, and you're about to go to mediation and you're worried that they've got maybe 20 grand worth of stuff in the house.
Yes.
And you can't get it valued, but you want it included in the property pool because you're darn well certain that you're going to be the one that doesn't get to see or touch that stuff ever again. So, Mum, you talk about, if you're going into mediation to talk about the property, to assign secondhand values.
Yes.
And just look it up and say, well, look, you haven't let me go in and value these things, but I've looked up on Facebook Marketplace and this is how much this is
and
worth.
Here's a copy for you, for your lawyer, for the mediator, all of the things you'd remember. And hopefully, if you've followed our guidelines, you've recorded everything in the house. So you can do that. Yeah.
Yes. And that people can't afford values, Mum. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yes.
So they get these, painful people that are like, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you can just go and do an estimated value of everything yourself, Mum, you said you soon find out that they all of a sudden will give you proof of how much something actually is worth.
Yes, that's right. And cars now, a red book valuation, when I used to do it, when I was practicing, it was a bit of a novelty thing, and the other side would often insist on a proper valuation. But now the cases are saying that a red book valuation is acceptable. The court's trying to cut down on the cost. So I don't see it's much of a stretch from red book for a car to marketplace for these items, on whatever marketplace you go on.
So if you've got a manipulative, if you've listened to us before, you'll know before you leave the house, video everything, take photos of all the stuff, go through those videos and then write them all down, assign them all a value that you look up on Facebook Marketplace, and then include that in your negotiations. And if they weren't going to give you any of the stuff in the past, but all of a sudden they realize that's all going to go on their side of the property settlement, they might all of a sudden change their minds and want to give you some of that stuff.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the thing that you do need to keep in mind is, though, that sort of process is fine for normal stuff, whether it's early St. Vincent's de Paul, as a lot of young people have, or if it's very high-end furniture. Where it doesn't work very well, or actually it does work for antiques as well, but where it doesn't work very well is if you've got like a performance car or something.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about furniture.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
We won't.
So it's fine.
Then. Yes.
No. So let's talk about the ways not to handle your furniture fights. Okay. Because number one, we don't spend thousands of dollars on legal letters. And so arguing over a $200 coffee table, that might cost you $1,200 in legal fees.
Yeah.
So ask yourself, before you say to your lawyer, can you write a letter and ask them for this? Ask yourself, is it worth the cost of the legal letter, or can you use one of those other strategies and to make it fair for you in another way?
I agree. Maybe that coffee table was made by someone you love, right? You might be able to say to your ex or in the text, look, can I have that coffee table my uncle made? And in return, why don't I give you back your bike? Something like that.
Right.
Do your little negotiations on the things that matter.
The other thing that you shouldn't do, I think, is don't walk away with nothing.
Yeah.
Because I hear these people in the community group, a fair bit of them, some of them say, look, I'm so sick of all this drama. I just want to walk away. I don't care if I get anything.
Yeah.
And they're not just talking about furniture, they're talking about property, they're talking about money, they're talking about everything. But I think it's really important that if you are going to walk away with no furniture and nothing from the house, make sure your ex has some of it accounted for on their side of the property settlement.
Yes. And make sure, I can completely understand if you can't be bothered fighting over stuff because it is stuff. But yes, give a value onto the other person's side. I think that's an important way of dealing with stuff. You can raise it, like particular items like that imaginary coffee table and the bicycle. A court may make orders about those things if there's a special reason to, but don't walk away with nothing. Make sure your head is in the right place when you make that decision. And also leaving it for a while, particularly if you haven't already got final orders, leaving it for a while, deciding to do nothing for now is also a decision. So don't feel you have to do it all at once. Some people, when that person moves out, generally people have like a second couch or a little TV in a different room or something like that. And those sorts of things are the things that the leaver takes with them to set up whatever accommodation or temporary accommodation they're going to. And you can just leave it like that for the time being and deal with the furniture when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Don't feel you have to do it all at once.
So, and you've touched on this one. This is the other don't. Don't expect the court to sort it out, okay? Because like you said, Mum, courts rarely want to divide everyday household items. It's way too expensive and it's inefficient. They don't have time for it. They don't have the tolerance for it. So unless you've got a very, very specific reason why, then don't risk the money or the time.
Just get a value for them if you can, one way or another, and present that to the court so the court can take that into account when assigning who gets what.
Yeah. Okay. And the last don't I want to say is don't let it derail the furniture, your mediation.
Yes.
Because, and this can happen with high conflict, this can happen with manipulative and controlling. They can deliberately hold off and say at the end, I'll sign everything if I get to keep your great aunt's piano. Just those kind of things can be used and whipped out at the last minute to derail everything. Or we've seen, Mum, in mediation that it's a whole day mediation, but they spend 2 to 3 hours of it just arguing over the household contents. And that can make or break their whole time that they need to negotiate on property and kids.
They could have gone on Facebook themselves and bought most of that for what they've paid lawyers to go through it for, I think.
Even controlling type of exes, they know what emotionally you're attached to. They know what matters to you. And I think that you need to brace yourself if you have that type of person to know they're going to try and do that. And if you are listening to this and you haven't left yet, this is your little warning to say, squirrel some of that away. Get that to a friend's house. Stuff that they're not going to notice gone. And if you do leave, make sure you take the really emotional stuff with you at the time.
And your hobbies and crafts. And one of the things that often happens, and I love to see it in a consent order, is, this is going to happen with the house and this is going to happen with the car and the banks, the shares and the super. And the parties have divided the furniture between them to their own satisfaction. That's great. It just deals with that. And that way everyone just keeps what they've got. If you're finding you've got a mediation and it looks like getting bogged down in furniture or derailed by furniture, an option is to say the parties, like in your heads of agreement, the parties agree that they will deal with dividing the chattels of the marriage or, the furniture and contents within 14 days. And each of you makes offers as to what you want. If you're really sad about furniture that you've got, you've spent a lot of money on it in the past and you've had it for years, one way I think is to go and have a look at some display homes and go and have a look at some new furniture and see if that is a lighter feeling for you, that you would prefer to have that rather than maybe the big old heavy wooden thing that you used to have. So just sometimes I think the person who leaves the house gets off lightly because they don't have to deal with all the bits. They get a nice fresh start. On the other hand, I've always said if you do leave the house, though, you're going to spend the next probably 12 months buying extra stuff uptown to replace that blooming third drawer full of stuff that you've got.
I think if you're listening today, you've really got to think about what your divorce personality type is. Are they avoidant? Are they amicable? Are they manipulative, controlling, or are they high conflict? Because I genuinely think when you dig down deep enough, the fights are never about furniture. They're never about the furniture. It's about some people, they're like, I want what's fair.
Yes.
Other people are like, I want to continue to control you through things. Other people emotionally attached, I guess, because of kids' memories or passed away people. And then other people, they just want the closure, So I think those things, you've got to ask yourself, what is it making me hang on to these furniture items? Is it the fairness? Is it the control? Is it the emotion? Or is it the closure that I need? And ask yourself, what do I actually need to be financially stable? In my new future, will this $200 coffee table actually make the difference between me and 5 years being financially stable or not?
That's the point, Laura. Yeah.
And how can I move forwards? And when you're going through divorce or de facto separation, you are leaving your ex. You are leaving potentially their family home. You're leaving your old life. And sometimes having that stuff around can actually make it harder for you to move forwards.
I agree. Just go for a walk around IKEA. Every time I go to an IKEA, apart from the fact I can't find my way out, I do marvel.
I hate going into IKEA for that very reason. It scares the hell out of me.
But I do marvel at the lightness of the rooms they put together. You know how lovely and light the furniture is compared to me as a teenager and young married in the 70s. Everything was so heavy, leather and wood, you know.
Well, I mean, to be fair, the Kmart furniture these days is absolutely out of this world.
Yes.
Like, I'm impressed with it. Like, you can get this couch that you open the box and it slowly becomes a big couch, like a whole 3-seater couch. I saw that just the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, that would have been great. Because I do remember, Mum, after you split with your second husband, we were sitting on a plastic picnic table.
Yellow, it folded up, the chairs folded inside.
That was our dining room table. The chairs folded into but as a kid, I thought it was really cool. And I actually didn't realize there was anything wrong with that. So I think if you've got kids as well, just know that they're resilient. And I did think that a plastic picnic table was really cool to have as a dining room table.
It's all right for you four. You had a seat. I didn't have a chair.
Where did
I
you
used
sit?
to kneel at the end.
Well, look, we've all been there, but I've been in the reverse where I've actually I really loved all the stuff. I'd been to a designer decorator to get this, like, my furniture all lovely for the house that I thought was my forever home. And it's been really hard for me to let go of some of that stuff, like really, really hard. And I'm obviously in a smaller house and a smaller, my life is more streamlined, I guess. And I was shoving all this furniture in from our big house into my new forever home, and it didn't fit. And for 2 years, I was like squishing myself into a tiny room trying to get around furniture that did not fit.
Yeah.
And it finally only dawned on me at the end of last year that I needed to let it go. And once I let it go, the room was so much bigger, and just the relief and the memories just looking at it, it's all gone now. It's erased, and I feel so much lighter. And maybe that's something that's going to take you a couple of years to work through, or maybe you've been given a gift of not having to go through that. But whatever it is that you're facing with your furniture in your divorce or de facto separation, just remember, it's really not about the stuff. You need to look past that and think about future you,
yes,
your financial stability and your peace, and emotionally, what do you need to get through it? And in the end, all that really matters is you and your kids and your future.
That's right.
And you can restart if you need to.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And do it your way, you know.
You can get everything pink.
Yes, because furniture you buy as a couple is usually a compromise between you both.
True.
That's right.
True.
So you can do whatever you like. I know of someone who's turned the third bedroom into storage for fishing rods and camping gear.
Wow.
Yes.
How very lovely.
But, you know,
it's very rustic.
That's their house, right? And that's how
right.
they wouldn't have got away with that when they were still married, but that's how they want to live. And like you say, you can paint it all pink. And Laura, for the cushion, darling,
oh, yes. What are we going to embroider on a cushion, Mum?
It's all secondhand. It's just all secondhand. Okay?
It's just stuff.
It is.
It's just stuff.
It's just watch a couple of decluttering videos, and someone at my time of life, you know, finally I'm clearing stuff out, not because of a marriage breakup, but I'm realizing if I don't, someone else will have to do it in the future. And it's it's almost an amazing lightness of feeling. I think you didn't realize it till you were getting carpet down and you cleared the stuff out of the room. And you thought, so
much better. So, but we're not saying just let it go. We're saying make sure it's accounted for. Make sure your financial stability is in there. Make sure it's fair. Have it on the ledger. Have it in your negotiations.
Yes.
Make sure it's mentioned at mediation, and don't let them just railroad you with that stuff, and really think about it. It's something that you don't really think about, and some people can. It just gets swiped aside, but it could be the difference between $2,000 to $3,000, or if you're in a like a high property pool, could be the difference between $500,000, depending on what kind of artworks and things you have. So
that's right.
Whilst you're focusing on the really important stuff, just give yourself a little time for the next maybe half an hour to think about what is it that is there, what is it that's not been accounted for, and how can you include it in the property pool, and what's worth fighting for and what's not. And maybe have your lawyer fees next to you before you want to start arguing over one item, and look at how much it's going to cost you to do that. And maybe sometimes when it comes to stuff, we just have to let it go.
In a tug of war, people keep pulling and pulling on this rope. It's never really suggested to them in a competitive situation that another way of dealing with it is to just drop the rope and walk away. And that's what you might be able to do.
Yeah. I'm just going to remind everyone today that, again, Mum's not your lawyer.
Yeah.
So please get your legal advice, but maybe this has given you some ideas on how to deal with this little painful part that happens. And if you want to listen to what about their stuff, their belongings, there's another episode where we go into depth on dealing with that when someone's using it to control you. So thank you so much, Mum, for your time, and we'll talk to you next week.
No worries, Laura. Bye. Bye, everyone. Thank you, darling.
If you found this podcast helpful, we'd love it if you could rate, review and subscribe. By doing so, you are spreading the word to help someone else just like you. Lynn would like to remind you that this podcast is general advice only, and you should always get legal advice in relation to your particular situation. And remember that the Australian laws may have changed since recording